Part 1, The Burning. Veristix had lived for 3,000 years. She'd seen empires rise from nothing and crumble into dust. She'd watched stars born and die. From her cave high in the mountains of Kethera, she observed everything with cold, ancient eyes. Nothing surprised her anymore. Nothing moved her. She was done with the world and its endless, pointless conflicts. That's what she told herself, anyway. The morning started like any other. Veristix lay coiled in her treasure chamber, half asleep, when the sky outside her cave began to glow. Not the warm orange of sunrise. This was different. Harsh. Wrong. She lifted her massive head and sniffed the air. Smoke. Burning metal. The acrid stench of plasma weapons. She moved to the cave entrance and looked down at the valley below. The human settlement there had been quiet and peaceful for the past 50 years. Farmers, mostly. They kept to themselves, grew their crops, raised their children. Veristix had watched them occasionally, the way one might observe ants building their hills. Interesting in a detached sort of way, but nothing worth getting involved with. But now, the entire valley was burning. Warships hung in the sky like dark storm clouds. The Crethean Empire. Veristix recognized their ships immediately. They were a conquest species, always hungry for more territory, more resources, more power. She'd seen a dozen species like them come and go over the centuries. Plasma fire rained down from the ships in brilliant blue streaks. Where it touched, buildings exploded. Fields turned to glass. The air itself seemed to scream. Veristix could hear it even from her mountain perch, the roar of destruction, the collapse of homes, the crackle of flames consuming everything. She should go deeper into her cave. This wasn't her fight. It had never been her fight. 3,000 years of staying neutral had kept her alive when so many others of her kind had fallen. Getting involved in the wars of younger species was how you ended up dead. Veristix turned away from the carnage. The sounds would stop soon enough. They always did. But then, cutting through the roar of fire and the howl of wind, she heard something else. A scream. High-pitched. Desperate. A child's voice. Her claws scraped against stone as she froze. Just a child. One small voice among hundreds of dying. It shouldn't matter. One life against 3,000 years of wisdom that said to stay out of it. She took another step toward the dark safety of her inner chambers. The scream came again, weaker this time. Veristix cursed in a language dead for 2 millennia. Then she spread her wings and dove off the mountain. The heat hit her first. Even for a dragon, the intensity of the fires was shocking. The Cretheans weren't just attacking. They were erasing. Every building leveled. Every field scorched. This wasn't conquest. This was extermination. She landed in what had been the town square. Bodies lay everywhere. Veristix had seen death before, countless times, but something about the smallness of it all struck her. These weren't soldiers. They were shopkeepers and teachers and mechanics. Regular people who'd probably never held a weapon in their lives. The crying was coming from a collapsed farmhouse at the edge of the square. Veristix approached carefully, her enormous bulk making the rubble shift and groan. She used one claw to carefully lift away a fallen beam. There, in a small pocket of debris that had somehow protected her from the worst of it, was a little girl. Maybe 6 years old. Blonde hair matted with ashen blood. She clutched a teddy bear to her chest. The bear was burned, one of its button eyes missing, but the girl held it like it was the most precious thing in the universe. Next to her lay 2 adults. The girl's parents, Veristix assumed. They weren't moving. They'd never move again. The girl looked up at the dragon with wide blue eyes. She should have been terrified. A creature the size of a house, covered in scales harder than steel, with teeth like swords and claws that could tear through metal. But the girl just stared, tears cutting clean tracks through the soot on her face. "Mama won't wake up," the girl whispered. Before Veristix could respond, she heard the heavy footsteps of Crethean soldiers. 3 of them, moving through the ruins, checking for survivors. Their weapons were still hot from firing. They were laughing about something. They spotted the girl. One raised his rifle. Veristix didn't think. For the first time in centuries, she acted on pure instinct. Her wings swept out, curling around the child in a protective embrace. Her other claw came down on the nearest soldier, crushing him instantly. The second soldier managed to fire once. The plasma bolt hit Veristix's shoulder, burning through scales that had turned aside swords and arrows and bullets for 3,000 years. It hurt. She didn't care. Dragon fire erupted from her throat, a torrent of flames so hot it turned sand to glass and metal to liquid. The remaining soldiers didn't even have time to scream. In the sudden silence that followed, Veristix became aware of the small body pressed against her scales, trembling but alive. The girl's heartbeat was so fast, so fragile. Like a bird's. "What's your name, little one?" Veristix asked, her voice a low rumble that made the ground vibrate. The girl swallowed hard. "Lily," she said. "My name is Lily. I'm Veristix. Can you walk?" Lily nodded, though she was clearly in shock. She clutched her ruined teddy bear tighter. "Where's my mama? Where's my dad? Why won't they wake up?" Veristix had no answer that wouldn't break the child further. Instead, she gently scooped Lily up in one massive claw, careful not to let her sharp talons touch the girl's skin. "We need to leave. Now. More soldiers are coming." "But Mama." "I'm sorry, Lily. I'm so sorry." The girl began to cry, great heaving sobs that shook her whole body. Veristix spread her wings and launched into the smoke-filled sky, carrying the only survivor she could save. As they climbed above the burning valley, Veristix looked back once. The entire settlement was gone. Erased as thoroughly as if it had never existed. And somewhere in her ancient, cold heart, something cracked. Something that had been frozen for a very, very long time began, slowly, painfully, to thaw. She looked down at the crying child in her grasp and realized with absolute certainty that her 3,000 years of neutrality had just come to an end. Part 2, The Unexpected Bond. Veristix's cave was dark and cold, lit only by the faint glow of crystal formations that had grown over thousands of years. She set Lily down carefully on a flat stone near the entrance, where dying sunlight still reached. The girl was still clutching that burned teddy bear, staring at nothing. The dragon had no idea what to do with a human child. She'd never raised hatchlings of her own. Her eggs had been destroyed in a war she could barely remember now, the pain of it buried so deep she'd almost forgotten it existed. Almost. "Are you hungry?" Veristix asked awkwardly. Lily didn't respond. She just sat there, small and broken, tears drying on her cheeks. Veristix sighed, a sound like wind through a canyon. She had some dried meat stored deeper in the cave, provisions she kept for the rare times she didn't want to hunt. She fetched some and placed it near the girl. Lily didn't even look at it. The first night was the hardest. Lily cried until she had no tears left, calling for her mother over and over. Veristix didn't know how to comfort her. Dragons didn't comfort. They endured. They survived. But listening to those small, broken sobs did something to her. She moved closer, her massive body curling around the girl like a living wall, and extended one wing to create a shelter of scales and warmth. Lily's crying eventually faded into exhausted sleep. And Veristix, who hadn't cared about anything in centuries, found herself staying awake all night, listening to make sure the child was still breathing. The second day, Lily ate a little. Not much, but enough. She still wouldn't talk, wouldn't look at Veristix. Just sat there holding that teddy bear. On the third day, something changed. Veristix was organizing her treasure hoard, a habit born of 3,000 years of collecting, when she heard a small gasp behind her. She turned to find Lily standing at the edge of the chamber, eyes wide, staring at the glittering piles of gold and jewels and ancient artifacts. "Pretty," Lily whispered. The first word she'd spoken since that first night. Something loosened in Veristix's chest. "You can look, if you want. Just don't touch the red crystal. It's sharp." Lily moved forward slowly, still wary but curious. She walked among the treasures with careful steps, looking but not touching. When she reached a pile of old coins from a civilization that had vanished 1,000 years ago, she turned back to Veristix. "Why do you have all this?" "Dragons collect things. It's what we do." "Why?" Veristix paused. No one had ever asked her that before. "I don't know. Habit, I suppose." Lily picked up a single gold coin, examining it in the crystal light. "My dad said that stuff is only special if it means something. He gave my mom a ring made of wood. Just wood. But she loved it more than anything because he made it himself." The dragon studied the small human. "Your father sounds like he was very wise. He was the best dad ever." Lily's voice cracked, but she didn't cry. She just held that coin, turning it over in her small hands. "Can I keep this? To remember?" "Of course." That evening, Lily ate a full meal for the first time. She even asked questions about the cave, about the crystals, about how long Veristix had lived there. The dragon answered each one, surprised to find she enjoyed the conversation. It had been so long since anyone had talked to her. The days began to blur together. Lily explored every corner of the cave system. She was endlessly curious, asking questions about everything. Why were some crystals blue and others green? How hot was dragon fire? Could Veristix fly to the moon? Had she ever met any other dragons? Veristix found herself telling stories she hadn't thought about in centuries. About ancient battles and lost kingdoms. About the time she'd accidentally started a forest fire trying to roast a particularly large deer. About the constellation of stars that had guided her home when she was young and still learning to fly. Lily listened to everything with wide eyes, sitting cross-legged at the dragon's feet like it was the most natural thing in the world. One morning, Veristix woke to find Lily arranging the cave crystals into patterns. She'd broken off small pieces and was creating something on the flat stone. "What are you making?" the dragon asked. "A garden. Like we had at home." Lily's hands moved with careful precision, placing each crystal just so. "See? These blue ones are flowers. The green ones are grass. And this big one in the middle is a tree." Veristix looked at the makeshift garden. It was crude, temporary, would probably fall apart by evening. But there was something beautiful about it. Something hopeful. "My dad always said you gotta make good things, even when bad things happen," Lily continued, not looking up from her work. "He said that's what makes us human. We keep trying." The dragon felt something shift inside her. This child had lost everything. Her home. Her family. Her entire world had burned. And here she was, making a garden out of rocks. "Your father was right," Veristix said softly. But while Lily was slowly healing, Veristix had been busy with something else. At night, when the girl slept, the dragon extended her consciousness to the old network she hadn't touched in years. Dragon technology, ancient and powerful, woven into the very stone of the planet. She listened to Crethean communications. Watched their troop movements. And learned something that froze her blood. The attack on Lily's village wasn't random. It was systematic. The Cretheans were exterminating humans. Not just on Kethera, but everywhere. Every colony, every settlement, every ship. Their official reason, broadcast on military channels, was chilling. Humans were too unpredictable, too adaptable, too dangerous if left unchecked. Better to eliminate them now before they became a real threat. Veristix looked at Lily, who was humming a song to herself while adding more crystals to her garden. This small, fragile creature was considered dangerous. This child who made art from rocks and cried for her mother was a threat that needed to be eliminated. The dragon's anger was cold and ancient and absolute. That night, after Lily fell asleep curled against her side like she always did now, Veristix made a decision. She'd spent 3,000 years staying neutral, staying safe, staying alone. She'd told herself it was wisdom. But watching Lily sleep, one small hand resting on her scales, Veristix understood the truth. It wasn't wisdom. It was cowardice. She'd hidden while others fought and died. She'd watched civilizations burn and told herself it wasn't her problem. She'd wrapped herself in neutrality like armor and called it enlightenment. But this child trusted her. This small human, who had every reason to fear and hate the universe, had chosen to trust a dragon. Had chosen hope over despair. Had chosen to make gardens in the dark. Veristix could do no less. She carefully extracted her wing from around Lily, making sure not to wake her. Then she moved to the cave entrance and looked out at the valley, still smoking from the attack days ago. The Cretheans thought humans were dangerous because they were unpredictable and adaptable. They had no idea. They'd just given humanity something far more dangerous than that. They'd given them an angry dragon. The Crethean supply depot sat in a valley 30 miles from Veristix's cave. She'd watched them build it over the past week, a sprawling complex of prefabricated buildings and armored vehicles. They thought they were safe here, far from any remaining human resistance. They were wrong. Veristix struck at midnight, when most of the soldiers were asleep. She came in low and fast, her massive wings silent against the stars. Dragon fire turned their ammunition stores into a series of explosions that lit up the night sky. By the time the alarm sounded, half the depot was already gone. She didn't stay to fight. That wasn't the point. The point was to make them afraid, to make them wonder what else might be hiding in the mountains. When she returned to the cave, Lily was awake, standing at the entrance with worried eyes. "Where did you go?" the girl asked. "Hunting," Veristix said. It wasn't entirely a lie. Lily studied her with those sharp blue eyes. "You're not eating enough for hunting. You went to fight them, didn't you? The bad people who hurt everyone." The dragon sighed. There was no point lying to the child. "Yes." "Good." Lily's voice was fierce, harder than any 6-year-old should be. "They deserve it. Over the next 2 weeks, Veristix hit 3 more targets. Communication arrays. Transport hubs. Patrol stations. Each strike was surgical, calculated to cause maximum disruption with minimal exposure. The Creathians were growing nervous. Their reports spoke of a massive predator, something they couldn't track or predict. But Veristix knew she couldn't win alone. One dragon against an empire? Even her pride wasn't that blind. She needed allies. She needed the humans. The problem was finding them. She used her old sensor networks, the ones built into the planet's crust by dragons who'd lived here millennia ago. Slowly, she began picking up signals. Encrypted communications. Hidden camps. Survivors who'd gone to ground after the initial attack. The largest group was holed up in an abandoned mining complex 40 miles south. 23 humans, including 5 children. They'd been hiding for nearly a month, running low on food and medical supplies. Veristix told Lily she'd be gone for a few hours. "Can I come?" the girl asked. "Not yet. It might be dangerous." "Everything's dangerous now." Lily crossed her arms. "But okay. Just come back." "I will. I promise." The mining complex was hidden in a cliff face, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. Veristix landed 100 yards away and approached on foot, not wanting to alarm anyone. She could smell them before she saw them. Fear. Exhaustion. Desperation. A man stepped out from behind a rock, rifle raised. He was in his 40s, with graying hair and eyes that had seen too much. His hands were steady though, and he didn't look afraid. Just determined. "That's close enough," he said. Veristix stopped. "I'm not here to hurt you. You're a dragon. Kind of hard to believe that." "Fair enough. But I've been hitting Creathian targets for 2 weeks. The supply depot. The communications tower near the river. The patrol station on the ridge." The man's eyes narrowed. "That was you?" "Yes. And I can do more. But I need to know how many survivors are out there. How many are still fighting?" A woman emerged from the mine entrance, dark hair pulled back, a medical kit slung over her shoulder. Why would a dragon care about humans? It was a good question. Veristix thought about Lily, probably playing with her crystal garden right now, humming songs her mother taught her. "Because one of you taught me that some things are worth fighting for," the dragon said simply. The man and woman exchanged glances. After a long moment, the man lowered his rifle slightly. "My name's Grant. This is Patricia. We've got 23 people here. Mostly civilians. A few former soldiers. We've been trying to contact other groups, but the Creathians jam everything. I can help with that. I have access to old technology they don't know about." Patricia stepped forward. "Why should we trust you? Your kind never got involved before. Where were the dragons when the Creathians started burning our worlds?" The accusation stung because it was true. "We were hiding. Being cowards. I'm trying to fix that now." Grant studied her for a long moment. "You said one of us taught you. Who?" "A child. Her name is Lily. She's 6 years old. I found her in the ruins of Millbrook Settlement. She's the only survivor I know of from there." Patricia's hand flew to her mouth. "Lily Peterson? Blonde hair? Always carried a teddy bear?" "Yes." "You know her?" "She's my niece." Patricia's voice cracked. "Her parents, Tom and Jennifer, they were my brother and sister-in-law. We got separated during the attack. I thought everyone was dead." Veristix felt something warm spread through her chest. "She's alive. She's safe. She's at my cave." Patricia started forward, but Grant caught her arm. "Could be a trap." "It's not," Veristix said. "I'll take you to her. Right now, if you want. But first, tell me about the other groups. How many survivors are there?" Grant's expression softened slightly. "If you're really on our side, we've got maybe 300 people scattered across the region. Maybe more we don't know about. But we're disorganized. No real leadership. No coordination. Just people trying to survive day to day. That changes now. I'll establish a secure communication network. Link all the groups together. Share intelligence about Creathian movements." "And then what?" Grant asked. "We're farmers and teachers and mechanics. They're a military empire with warships and plasma weapons. What chance do we have?" Veristix drew herself up to her full height, scales gleaming in the moonlight. "You have me. And before this is over, you'll have others like me. The Creathians think they can exterminate your species because you're weak. They're about to learn what humanity really is. Patricia wiped her eyes. Can we see Lily? Please? Of course. Get on my back. Both of you. They hesitated, but desperation and hope won out. Veristix flew them back to her cave, careful to keep her flight smooth. When they landed, Lily was waiting at the entrance. Vera. You're back, I was worried. She stopped, staring. Aunt Patricia? Patricia slid off the dragon's back and ran forward, dropping to her knees. Lily crashed into her arms, and they both dissolved into tears. Grant stood back, respectfully giving them space, but his eyes were wet too. Veristix watched them, and something settled in her ancient heart. This was why she fought. Not for territory or treasure or glory. For this. 4 families finding each other again. 4 hope in the darkness. Grant walked over to stand beside her. You really mean it? You're going to help us? I am. I'll start tonight. By morning, every survivor group in this region will be able to communicate securely. And then we plan. Plan what? How to turn a scattered group of refugees into an army. How to make the Crethians regret ever coming to this world. Veristix looked down at Lily, who was showing Patricia her crystal garden, explaining each piece with serious concentration. How to prove that underestimating humanity is the last mistake anyone should make. Grant held out his hand. It looked impossibly small against her massive claw, but Veristix carefully extended one talon. They shook, human and dragon, sealing an alliance that would change everything. Welcome to the resistance, Grant said with a tired smile. Welcome to what happens when you give humans hope, Veristix replied. Inside the cave, Lily's laughter echoed off the walls. It was the first time Veristix had heard her truly laugh since the burning. The sound was like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. The war was far from over. But for the first time, they had something the Crethians didn't. They had each other. 3 months after the burning of Millbrook, the resistance had transformed from scattered survivors into something that actually scared the Crethians. Veristix's communication network connected 12 different groups across the region. Over 400 humans, all working together now, sharing intelligence and coordinating strikes. But Veristix knew it wasn't enough. 400 humans and 1 dragon against an empire? They needed more. They needed what she'd been avoiding for 3,000 years. They needed other dragons. She sat in her cave one evening, Lily asleep against her side as usual, and reached out through the old networks. Dragon communication was different from human technology. It was older, deeper, woven into the fabric of reality itself. She sent out a call to every dragon she'd ever known, every ancient being who'd retreated into isolation like she had. The first response came from Thesarax, a dragon even older than Veristix. His voice in her mind was dry as dust. After 3,000 years of silence, now you call? Let me guess. You want help. The Crethians are exterminating humans. Systematically. Every colony, every world. And? Young species rise and fall. You know this. We've watched it happen 100 times. This is different. It's always different, Veristix. Until it isn't. She felt his presence withdraw, the connection severing. 2 others responded similarly. They'd seen too much, lived too long, cared too little. The isolation had turned them cold in ways even Veristix hadn't managed. But 3 responded differently. Morpheus, scarred and battle-worn, who'd lost his entire clan in a war 2 millennia ago. Nightshade, who'd watched her hatchlings die and sworn never to care again. And Ironscale, the youngest of them at only 1,500 years old, still curious about the universe. Tell me why I should care, Morpheus rumbled. So Veristix told them. About Lily. About finding her in the ruins, clutching a burned teddy bear. About how a 6-year-old child had taught an ancient dragon that hope didn't require permanence to matter. About Patricia crying when she found her niece alive. About Grant organizing defense plans with former farmers who'd never held weapons before. About humans who had every reason to give up but kept fighting anyway. They make gardens out of crystals, Veristix said. They laugh even when everything is broken. They protect each other even when it means they'll die. They're extraordinary, and the Crethians want to erase them from existence. There was a long silence. Then Ironscale spoke. I want to meet them. These humans who make you care again. You're sentimental, young one, Nightshade said, but her voice was softer than her words. Though I admit, I'm curious about a species that can melt Veristix's frozen heart. Morpheus was quiet for a long moment. 3,000 years ago, I swore I'd never fight in another species war. That I'd learned my lesson about getting involved. He paused. But maybe the real lesson is that staying neutral when extinction is happening makes you complicit. I'll come. 2 weeks later, 3 dragons landed near the main resistance camp. The humans panicked at first, scrambling for weapons until Veristix arrived with Lily riding on her back. "They're with us," Lily shouted, waving her arms. The sight of a small child fearlessly perched between a dragon's wings did more to calm everyone than any speech could have. Grant approached cautiously. "More dragons. Didn't think I'd see the day." Morpheus studied the camp with ancient eyes. Makeshift shelters. Rationed food. Weapons cobbled together from salvaged parts. Children playing in the dirt, trying to be normal when nothing was normal anymore. "You're all going to die if we don't help you." "Probably," Grant admitted. "We've been dying slowly for months. Least now we're taking some of them with us." "That's the spirit," Ironscale said with what might have been approval. Patricia had organized the camp's medical operation in a converted storage bunker. She showed Nightshade the wounded, men and women hurt in skirmishes with Crethean patrols. Burns from plasma weapons. Broken bones from collapsed buildings. Infections from lack of proper supplies. "We're doing our best with what we have," Patricia explained. "But we lose someone almost every week." Nightshade's expression was unreadable. "When my hatchlings died, I swore I'd never care about the suffering of others again. It hurt too much." She looked at a young woman whose arm was badly burned. "But I remember what it felt like to be helpless. To watch loved ones suffer and be unable to stop it." She moved to the wounded woman and breathed a gentle stream of fire over the injury. Not the destructive inferno dragons were famous for, but something controlled, precise. The woman gasped as the burns began to heal, dragon fire somehow accelerating her body's natural recovery. "How?" Patricia whispered. "Very old magic. Almost forgotten. I can teach you some of it, though human bodies work differently." Over the next month, the resistance transformed again. With 4 dragons providing aerial reconnaissance, they knew where every Crethean patrol was before the enemy did. Morpheus's tactical knowledge, earned over millennia of warfare, turned farmers into effective guerrilla fighters. Ironscale's enthusiasm was infectious, giving everyone hope that maybe, just maybe, they could actually win this. And Lily, now 7 years old, had become something unexpected. A bridge between species. She'd sit with new arrivals who were terrified of the dragons, telling them stories about Vera and how safe she felt wrapped in dragon wings. She'd translate between human impatience and dragon patience, helping both sides understand each other. "Vera says we should wait 3 more days before hitting the supply convoy," Lily explained to Grant during one planning session. "The moon will be darker, and their sensors don't work as well." 3 days. A fighter named Derek complained. "We need those supplies now." "But if we go now, more people die," Lily said simply. "Vera's really smart about this stuff. She's been doing it for forever." Derek looked at the small girl, then at the massive dragon curled behind her, then back. "You know what? The kid's right. We wait." The coordinated strikes began. Humans and dragons working together, hitting Crethean positions with precision and vanishing before reinforcements arrived. Supply lines got disrupted. Communications went dark. Patrols stopped coming back. The Crethean commander, a rigid military mind named Vectha, couldn't understand what was happening. His reports back to the Empire became increasingly frustrated. Humans were supposed to be easy to crush. They were disorganized, emotional, short-lived. But these humans were different. They fought with a ferocity he'd never encountered, backed by creatures from legend he'd thought were extinct. News of Kethra's resistance spread through underground channels. Other human colonies, scattered across Crethean space, heard the whispers. On Kethra, humanity had found allies. On Kethra, they were fighting back. On Kethra, they were winning. More survivors emerged from hiding. Word reached distant settlements. Slowly, a message formed in the human networks, passed from world to world. "Kethra holds. Join us." One evening, Veristix found Lily on a cliff overlooking the valley, watching the sunset. The girl was older now, hardened by months of war but still holding that burned teddy bear. "Do you think we can really win?" Lily asked. Veristix considered the question carefully. "I think humans have already won something more important. You've shown the galaxy that you won't go quietly. That you're worth something. That's a victory they can never take away." "But will we survive?" "I don't know." But I'll do everything in my power to make sure you do. Lily leaned against the dragon's foreleg. You know what my dad used to say? He said being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing even when you're terrified. Your father was very wise. I'm scared, Vera. All the time. So am I. Lily looked up in surprise. Really? But you're ancient and powerful and nothing scares you. Everything scares me now, Veristix admitted. Because I have something to lose. I have you. I have Patricia and Grant and all the others. Fear means you care. And caring is the bravest thing any of us can do. In the distance, Crethean ships hung in orbit, dark shapes against the stars. The final battle was coming. Everyone could feel it. But tonight, a dragon and a human child watched the sunset together, and that was enough. The Crethean Empire had enough. Commander Vector's embarrassing reports had reached the highest levels of command, and they'd made a decision. They would commit 3 full battle groups to Cathara. Over 300 warships. Enough firepower to glass the entire planet if necessary. The message was clear, humanity's little rebellion ended now. Veristix picked up the fleet movements through her sensor network 3 days before they arrived. She called an emergency meeting at the main camp, all the resistance leaders gathered in the largest cave. They're coming with everything they have, she said without preamble. 300 ships. Maybe more. They'll be here in 72 hours. The silence was heavy. Grant ran a hand through his graying hair. Patricia closed her eyes. Derek, the former farmer-turned-fighter, let out a long breath. Can we evacuate? Someone asked. Where? Grant replied. They control the whole sector. There's nowhere to run. Lily sat cross-legged on the floor, her teddy bear in her lap. She was 8 now, her blonde hair longer, her eyes older than they should be. Then we fight. Lily, sweetheart, Patricia said gently. 300 ships. We can't. We have to. Lily's voice was firm. Because if we don't fight here, they'll just keep going. They'll kill every human everywhere. Someone has to stop them. Why not us? Morpheus, lounging at the back of the cave, made a rumbling sound that might have been approval. The hatchling speaks truth. Running just delays the inevitable. At least here we choose our ground. Our ground is a cave system and some mountain valleys, Derek pointed out. Against ships that can bombard us from orbit. Ironscale shifted her wings. Not if we take out their orbital capacity first. Hit the capital ships hard, create chaos in their formations, give you time to strike their ground forces. 4 dragons against 300 warships, Grant said quietly. Those are suicide odds. Perhaps. Nightshade's voice was cold. But I've lived 1500 years. If I must die, at least it will be for something that matters. The resistance spent the next 3 days preparing. They evacuated the children and elderly to the deepest caves, stocked with supplies to last months if needed. The fighters, around 300 now, positioned themselves throughout the mountains. They had plasma weapons scavenged from fallen Crethean soldiers, explosives made from mining equipment, and sheer desperate courage. Lily insisted on staying with the fighters. Patricia argued for hours, but the girl wouldn't budge. You need me, Lily said. I can coordinate between you and Vera. I know how she thinks. I can help. Patricia looked to Veristix for support, but the dragon was silent. Finally, she said, the child has been in this war from the beginning. It's her choice. She's 8 years old. And she's seen more than most soldiers twice her age. Veristix lowered her massive head to look Lily in the eyes. Are you sure? This will be dangerous. I cannot promise to keep you safe. Lily touched the dragon's snout, her small hand barely spanning a single scale. I'm sure. You saved me when my world burned. Now I help save everyone else. When the Crethean fleet arrived, they came in overwhelming force. The sky darkened with ships, massive dreadnoughts flanked by destroyers and fighters. Their commander broadcast a message planet-wide. Humans of Cathara. Your rebellion ends today. Surrender now and deaths will be quick. Resist, and we will make examples of you that the galaxy will remember for generations. Grant's response was simple. Come and get us. The battle began at dawn. The 4 dragons launched first, streaking toward the fleet like ancient missiles. Veristix led the way, Morpheus on her right, Nightshade and Ironscale flanking. The Cretheans had weapons that could hurt even dragon scales, plasma lances and particle beams that burned like miniature stars. But the dragons were fast and furious and absolutely committed. Veristix crashed into a destroyer's bridge, her claws tearing through reinforced metal like paper. Morpheus unleashed dragonfire hot enough to melt hull plating. Nightshade and Ironscale worked in tandem, crippling ship after ship. On the ground, Lily coordinated the human forces from a command post deep in the caves. She wore a headset jury-rigged from Crethean technology, her voice calm despite the chaos. Vera, 3 fighters coming at you from above. Patricia, enemy troops landing near your position, 200 meters east. Derek, the supply depot is vulnerable, hit it now. The humans fought with everything they had. Not because they thought they'd win, but because giving up meant extinction. They fought for the families hiding in the caves. They fought for the settlements that had burned. They fought because someone had to. A plasma lance caught Morpheus across the chest. The ancient dragon roared in pain and fury, but kept fighting. Another hit took out his left wing. He began to fall. Morpheus is down. Ironscale screamed across the dragon network. The old dragon crashed into a mountain valley, surrounded immediately by Crethean ground forces. He was wounded, unable to fly, outnumbered 100 to 1. Then Grant's voice cut through the comm system. All units, the dragon is down. Protect him. What happened next would be talked about for generations. Human fighters, fragile creatures with lifespans measured in decades, formed a protective wall around a being who'd lived for millennia. They knew they'd die. They did it anyway. Derek was the first to fall, plasma bolt through the chest. He died with his rifle still firing. Patricia led a charge that broke the Crethean line, though it cost her half her squad. More humans poured in, wave after wave, trading their lives so an ancient dragon could recover. Watching from above, Veristix felt something break inside her. These creatures, these beautiful, stubborn, impossible creatures, were dying to protect one of her kind. Beings they'd known for mere months were sacrificing everything. Something ancient and primal awakened in her chest. Power she'd hoarded for 3,000 years, kept locked away for emergencies that never came. She'd been afraid to use it, afraid it would burn her out completely. But watching humans die for Morpheus, she didn't care anymore. Dragon fire erupted from Veristix like a star going nova. Not the controlled flame she usually wielded, but raw, primordial power. The largest Crethean dreadnought, the one their fleet commander operated from, simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there. The next, nothing but expanding gas and debris. The shockwave rippled through the fleet. Ships scattered. Communications devolved into panic. Their commander was gone. Their flagship destroyed. And the dragon that did it was still coming. Nightshade and Ironscale pressed the advantage, tearing through the confused formations. On the ground, the human fighters rallied, pushing back the landing forces. Morpheus struggled to his feet, wounded but alive, protected by the bodies of humans who'd given everything. The Crethean fleet broke. Not retreated in good order. Broke. Ships fled in random directions, abandoning formations, abandoning tactics, just trying to get away from the ancient fury they'd awakened. In 12 hours, it was over. 300 ships had arrived. Less than 50 escaped. The rest were debris or captured. Kethra was free. The cost was devastating. Over 100 humans dead. Morpheus would never fly again, his wing too damaged to heal properly. Veristix had exhausted herself so completely she could barely move. But they'd won. 5 years later, Lily stood before the Galactic Council. She was 13 now, tall for her age, still carrying that burned teddy bear though she claimed it was just for luck. Veristix stood beside her, the dragon's wing draped protectively over the girl just like that first night in the ruins. We're here to propose a formal alliance, Lily said, her voice clear and strong. Between humanity and the ancient dragons. Not a treaty of convenience. A real alliance built on trust and sacrifice. A council member, a crystalline being from the outer rim, spoke. Dragons have stayed neutral for thousands of years. Why change now? Veristix answered. Because a human child taught me that neutrality in the face of extinction isn't wisdom. It's cowardice. These beings, these humans, they burn so bright with hope even in darkness. They deserve to endure. They earned it with blood and courage on Kethra. Another counselor, this one avian, ruffled his feathers nervously. The Crethean Empire will be furious. They'll see this as an act of war. Let them, Lily said simply. We're not asking permission to exist. We're telling you we will exist. With or without your approval. The only question is whether you want to stand with us or stand aside. The vote took 3 hours. When it finished, the alliance was approved. Humanity would have a voice in galactic affairs. the dragons would emerge from isolation. And the Crethean Empire's campaign of extinction was declared a crime against sentient life. As they left the council chambers, reporters swarmed them. Lily handled the questions with practiced ease while Veristix looked on with obvious pride. Later, back at their ship, Lily leaned against the dragon's side just like she used to in the cave. "You know what's funny?" Lily said. "That first night, when you found me, I was so scared. I thought I'd lost everything." "You had lost everything. But I found something better. I found you. I found family." Veristix felt that warm feeling in her chest again, the one that never really went away anymore. "And I found a reason to care about the universe again. A small human child who made gardens from crystals and refused to give up. I was pretty stubborn, wasn't I?" "You still are. It's one of your best qualities." Lily laughed, the sound bright and genuine. Somewhere in the distance, other dragons were emerging from their hiding places, drawn by what had happened on Kethera. Humans were rebuilding not just settlements but hope. And an ancient dragon who'd spent 3,000 years alone had a family again. The universe had changed. Not because of grand prophecies or ancient destinies. But because one dragon saw a child in the flames and decided that some things were worth fighting for.